Welcome to our webinar, Design a Digital Workplace with MS Teams and SharePoint on Office 365. This webinar is all about how you can take that tool chest of tools delivered with Office 365 and use those to actually deliver and transform Office 365 into a digital workplace for your employees. So why this webinar now?
With COVID, the world of work is changing. We're seeing the need for workers to work remotely be not only something that's happening now, but in many cases will be the way that work is done in the future. That means that old infrastructure has to go. That hampers them.
And so what's happening, we're seeing a lot of organization management teams getting together and saying, look, this remote workforce is probably not going to go away. In fact, it's working out very well. However, we have to change our infrastructure to empower that remote workforce. And so there's new demands for management to put as a higher priority for IT, providing the tools to be able to empower that remote workforce. Meanwhile, at the same time, to allow for meetings and those type of things online, organizations are opening up Teams to any of their employees, and now employees are starting to create teams all over the place. And this is actually creating some organization anarchy. Again, putting IT under pressure to actually do something and put something in place from a structure perspective and a governance perspective that relates to teams and a digital workplace. All of this is coming together to actually raise the whole priority for creating a digital workplace leveraging Office 365 to new levels. So let's talk about that and what you have to do that. So just as an introduction, I'm Daryl Trimble, CEO of SP Marketplace. We have for 8 years been working with our customers to transform Office 365 into what digital workplace. So we have a lot of experience at doing this. We have over 1,400 installations worldwide that are running our products. And what we've done as a result of this is we've taken the best experiences, the best practices, and we've put together out-of-the-box digital workplace solutions built on SharePoint and MS Teams that are ready to go for many organizations. Now, this is a bit of a commercial. You can find more at spmarketplace.com. That's not what this webinar is really all about. What it's really about is to talk about some of the best practices that we have found works in creating a digital workplace leveraging SharePoint and Teams. And that's what this webinar is all about. So the webinar covers what is a digital workplace? What do they mean by that? And many organizations are already moving to the cloud. Why a digital workplace? What's the difference between just moving a bunch of files in our file server to the cloud on OneDrive and a digital workplace? Well, there's a lot of difference to that. And we'll talk about that. And then how do I design a digital workplace using Office 365 services and MS Teams and SharePoint? How does that all come together to create this digital workplace, and how do I get started on it? So that's what this webinar covers. It's meant to be very educational, and we hope that we can convey some information that will be useful for you as well. So let's talk about, first of all, the vision of a digital workplace. And it's no longer a vision, it's a reality now. Many organizations have to move to a digital workplace because of the current situation with remote workers. So what it is it's a common platform used across the organization in the cloud to drive employee collaboration, productivity, and self-service across all the employee population. Now, some of the things that make up a digital workplace is a single common user experience. In other words, that you're not just jumping from one product to another and so on, that you're going through almost like an employee hub and getting a common user experience to get at the different resources that you need to do your job. It needs to be available anytime, anywhere, on any device, okay, and that obviously supports remote workers right there. And it needs to provide what is called an intuitive portal structure. It's a structure that actually mimics the work that is being done in the organization and follows some of the organization structure in the way that it's actually set up. So a portal structure that's in the context of the organization. Now, to be successful, a digital workplace needs to provide a consistent approach to collaboration. In other words, you're not going to communicate one way for one thing, another way for another thing. It's got to be kind of a common approach to how people collaborate and share information, share documents, and so on. It's got to have a consistent approach to news and communication, because now in a digital workplace, you're not so much going through email for everything. You actually are setting up portals, and almost like your intranet site is for the outside world, this is a portal set of portals for your employees and a website for your employees to actually share news and communications and events, to be able to get at in a consistent way files and documents, things like policies and procedures and other things that they share. There also needs to be some process automation, things like asking for help or service requests or help desks. Other process automation it may link to that you already have, or you may want to set up, and automating things like approvals and service requests and so on. And then finally, it's got to be set up in the correct way to ensure governance, that while you're making these things available in a self-service organization, these resources, you've got to have governance to make sure the right people get to the right information, and that the information doesn't get to the wrong people, especially through things like searches and everything else. So this vision really is a virtual workplace, just like if you built an office building and had a department on a certain floor, and it had file cabinets, and it had conference rooms and meeting places and all that type of stuff. This is the virtual version of that. And the key thing here is, how do you actually make it so that employees want to use it, and that it's convenient to use and intuitive to use? And the key thing for this is, an employee should be able to come in here into the home page of this digital workplace, and within 1 to 2 clicks get to 90% of what they need to do their job as far as resources, information, communication, and so on. That is what is key to a digital workplace. So it's not a matter of just whipping out a home page with some news on it or throwing Teams out there. If you do that, you really aren't fulfilling a digital workplace. You're just throwing some tools out there at your users. So let's take a look at, why do you actually need a digital workplace? Well, one of the things is, if you're moving to the cloud, you've got to organize. You have an opportunity to organize things a little bit better than they were before. And before, what we saw is that many organizations were organically grown from different departments, and each department had their own way of organizing documents, and such as policies and procedures and different business processes, and how you even got services from these different parts of the organization was all different. IT might have a help desk. HR, you have to call them and hunt down the right person, and so on. And so if you're an employee in this workplace, a lot of times it was really frustrating. And if we actually look at it from the employee's point of view, the things they need to get at in this digital workplace is more than just a homepage with news. If you really want to drive productivity and self-service, you have to look at it from the employee's view of the world. And all of us are employees in one way or the other. We may be, head of sales, or, the HR director or whatever, but your department is one of several that provide services and resources to employees in the organization. And the key thing here is, when you look at all the different things employees need to get at, unfortunately, before the cloud, and even with the cloud in many organizations, it's all over the place. There's no common kind of internal, consistent business structure for how documents are organized, how we're going to communicate news, how do I find different business processes that are employee-faced processes. Maybe it's all over my Windows thing as icons, or it might be favorites in my browser. Okay, so nobody's ever stepped back and said, hey, let's kind of organize things a little bit better. And you have an opportunity to actually do that when you move to the cloud and when you set up a digital workplace. So it's all about delivering a seamless work experience in a very intuitive setup through a common user interface. Okay, and this is called an intranet structure often. And so when we take a look at it, moving to Office 365, you have a chance to step back and actually think about things in a consistent way across your whole organization. How am I going to organize documents? How am I going to manage and do communications like news and announcements and do governance over that, and so on. Now, the key thing is Office 365 SharePoint Teams is a great platform, but what they are, unfortunately, is a lot of parts and pieces. So you do need to design this kind of workplace out there. And actually, that's what we've done as a product set, which you can look at in other videos. But I'm not going to cover this today. I'm going to actually talk about how you can use the base out of Office 365 and set this up as well. So we found that in doing this, actually planning for what you want to do and going to the cloud and setting this up, it makes employees much more happier. It makes the whole organization much more productive. And it's really about organizing things correctly in the cloud in a consistent way as an internal business structure. So let's talk a little more about this. So the vision here is really, how do we take stuff that might be all over the place now, and when we move to the cloud, have it become a much more intuitive kind of digital workplace environment? How do we do that? Well, the key thing here is, first of all, Microsoft's already done their part. Okay, they have provided a digital workplace platform. Now, if you're already on this, that's great. Now, one of the things I'll guess, you're probably not using all of it. You might even only be using the email part of it. You're still using your network file server. You might have stuff over on Dropbox. Communications might still be going through email, and people lose track of communications or because you're overusing email for different things. Collaboration still might be through Excel documents, and when you're doing projects, people are talking on the phone or whatever it might be. And so the key thing is you have this very powerful digital workplace platform. It gives you all the resources and baseline things that you need to actually set up a digital workplace. The question is, do you know what to do with it, and are you using it correctly? And that's really where it comes in. The reality here is what Microsoft is providing is a lot of pieces and parts, okay? And there's Teams, there's SharePoint, there's, Office 365 groups, there's Planner, there's Yammer, and it's quite a toolbox, okay? And while very powerful, it's also a bit of a challenge for most organizations that says, how do I bring all this stuff together to set it up? And a lot of times they'll just roll it out to their users, and the users are scared half to death because this is what they get. Okay, they get a whole bunch of parts and pieces. And to be successful with a digital workplace, you can't really do that. Okay, in fact, what you're going to do is scare them off. So the key thing that we're seeing out here a lot of times is that people are actually putting, maybe a home page up with a communication site in SharePoint, a simple page. Now, a lot of times they screw that up because they have links to a bunch of documents and overwhelm people, and so the design of that is not often right to drive adoption, and they don't put in place the right content managers and people to update the news. But the other thing we're seeing, and this is actually a combination of driven from COVID and remote workers at home and having the need for online meetings, but also just demand from the business people. It says, where's our online kind of digital workplace? Where is it, IT? And what's happening is a lot of companies have turned on Teams and allowed anybody to create any team they want. Well, every time you create a team, it actually creates a SharePoint site, a document library, an Exchange email address, and it creates a whole bunch of infrastructure. And then they start using the teams, and all of a sudden documents are all over the place, and there's no place to trace where the documents are, and so on. And all of a sudden it goes from a cloud workplace to cloud chaos implemented. And so that's really a fundamental symptom of not putting in and doing the right thing, putting in a digital workplace. So the key thing here is that with a little bit of planning, okay, you can avoid the chaos, okay? And it's like anything else, you really need to put in place a plan before just releasing things out there. And that's really the first step in the digital workplace. And what you don't want to do is transfer the chaos you had that grew over time in your servers and the old way of doing things to the cloud. It makes no sense to transfer it because it's not going to have any benefit. So let's talk about designing your digital workplace structure for your organization, your structured organization, your ad hoc groups. How should you go about this? And we're actually going to take an analogy here, first of all. And it's amazing to me the number of companies that just didn't think that about it when they went to the cloud, that it's like building a house, okay, on an empty lot. And you have a family, okay, and this is very much like your organization. And when you build a house, one of the things that you'll want to do is obviously get the materials for the house and tools for the house and start building. But that's what a lot of people do. That's where they get in trouble. But that's not how you would build a house. Anybody that's built a house knows that what you end up with if you do this is you have no plan and everybody builds their own shack all over the place, and you don't have a house. You have chaos on the lot. Okay? So the analogy here is just like you would build a house, you would also design the house before you implemented the materials, before you used the tools. The architect would talk to the family and figure out what does the family need, what space do they need, what things do they use, and they would basically work with the architect to do a house plan or architect a plan for the lot. And that's how you end up getting a nicely built house that meets all the needs and can grow with the family. Okay? And that's an analogy. Now, let's take a look at what this means in moving to the cloud. So you're moving to the cloud. You got an empty slate. And it's your digital workplace platform. And Microsoft has just delivered a whole bunch of tools. You have a whole bunch of content, and you have documents, and you have processes, and so on. This is some of the materials. Microsoft delivers a pile of tools. Does that mean you just let everybody build everything they want? No. You need to go do a digital workplace design. You need to do a plan, step back and do a plan. And because if you don't, it's going to burn you in the end. So let's talk a little bit about designing, what we mean by this. What we really mean is let's take a look at the family. And the family in this case is your organization. And what are the requirements of the organization? And what we want to do is we want to build a house that provides the different rooms and services and those type of things for each part of the organization. And in doing that, we put in place what we call building blocks called portals. And there are different types of portals that match different types of needs. And what you want to do is actually take the different portal types, and these are actually provided by Teams and SharePoint, for instance, and you want to apply them to the different parts of your organization for where they fit. That's what we mean by a digital workplace architecture. And you want to do this proactively. You don't want to just say, hey, here you go, IT, build whatever you want. Or HR, here, build whatever you want. Or service, build whatever you want. You want to actually put in place some standards, some standard ways of how documents are going to be organized, of how communications is going to be done, and so on. So this is what we mean by building this digital workplace architecture, putting in place the organization points or homes for the different parts of the organization in here too. And we also know that it's not just the structured organization, but you also have ad hoc groups like projects and teams that work together. And so you also need to do that as well. So what you're doing is almost like building an office building. You've designed a floor or a area for each of these, but it's the virtual area for them to organize things. That's exactly what we're doing here. And the key thing too is, like I said, it's not just your setup functional structure. It also needs to be done and available in an ad hoc fashion for teams that form as well to share things. So this is what we mean by a digital workplace architecture, and we're going to show you how you can actually implement this using a mixture of Teams and SharePoint. So the first thing you want to do is an organization analysis. What does your organization look like? What ad hoc groups. This could be your board of directors, a leadership portal. This could be different projects. This could be a competitive discussion team in your sales and marketing areas. And take a look and say at both your structured and your unstructured groups within the organization. And you're really doing an organizational analysis just like your house. What does your house need? So there's an organization structure that's made up of probably departments that may be service departments. There may be divisions and or agencies or regions that these actually fall under as well. And there may need to be some common communications. There may need to be a roll-up of communications under North America, which may have actually mixtures of these people in it. You may have divisions that need roll-up and communications and so on. So the organizational structure basically has some specific needs. They need to be able to communicate news, events, and so on, and share it, and actually roll up the appropriate stuff to both corporate and to divisions or regions as needed. And there may be communications that just stays within the functions of IT or HR or whatever and shared between those teams. You need to have a way to organize documents and files and a consistent way in these different departments to organize things that are really just for department use. Maybe they're policies, but also you may need to have things that are for public use. An example in IT would be warranties or vendor contracts. Those need to be really just secured down to the IT group. But you might also have a library of public things such as your Excel quick reference cards or other type of resource things that are for the IT customer, that being the employee. And the same thing goes with a lot of these. So you need to have some way to organize documents and resources. And even up at the top level, you need to have a way to do a targeted search that under governance can provide the employee with what they need without having to visit every department. You need to be able to provide internal services. How does somebody get at the help desk for IT, or even if there's a common service request system, you might want to think about that at this point too. That could be used for HR and finance or marketing. If I need the latest logo, what's approved, I'd like to be able to just do a search and find the latest approved logo rather than calling up marketing and asking where to get it. Business processes and work activities, tracking tasks, tracking projects, tracking, allowing employees to get at common processes like time off or expense reports or something like that too. And you may already have systems that do that, but the question is, how do they get to those systems? Is there a common way to do that? And really what we're doing here is for each of these groups, we're providing a place to organize the things that they do as a group and a function. Now, there's also these ad hoc teams, okay, and they're less kind of structured and as well. They may or may not need to share news with the rest of the organization. It's not as important that the Docker file resources be available, and organized so that employees can get to them. It's usually more kind of peer-to-peer type of sharing down here. And so there are things like leadership teams or projects or committees and boards and so on. And theirs is really more collaborative in nature, meetings and discussions. Now, you still have collaborative type things within these groups because IT itself is a team. But this is more around peer-to-peer sharing as opposed to a operational function as well. So you kind of need to break down your organization. It's like asking every family member when you're building the house, what are you looking for in the house? And what, do you want your own bedroom and those type of things? It's getting requirements. So, and the way these are fulfilled are with something called portals. So we call one type of portal that is really for these functional departments here a workplace portal. And then the other types of portals for groups that are sharing things, being collaborative, is a group portal. And portals are the areas, the virtual rooms that these departments come in and operate their department from. So let's take a closer look at portals here because it relates to Teams and SharePoint because you're going to use Teams and SharePoint to set up these portals. But these are the building blocks. So one of the types is a communication site. And this is actually used for your home pages, your regional pages. It's usually a news and information type site out there that people visit. And it's something that maybe every morning somebody comes in, and you might even have this as the home page for your intranet or your digital workplace. For the organization. So it has news and information, social information. There might be separate kind of pages from this that we call employee self-service, like a Doc Central, Service Central, or Process Central, are destinations where they can get documents or any type of internal services or get to any type of processes. It's used as an organization homepage, and it could even be at the division or region level because, again, those are also kind of social groups that need to communicate. And it typically resides at the top of a hierarchy structure of portals. Now, the second one is what we call a workplace portal. And this is a functional group, as we've talked about it, such as a department. And it's a place to organize things for that department. Documents, calendars, meetings, communications, news, announcements, that type of thing, to collaborate and track work activities. And if it's an internal service department like IT or marketing or HR or that type of thing, you may even have an employee service portal and help desk. So in other words, a page that employees can come into and securely be able to look at things that are related to them, related to that function, but not get at any of the secure stuff they shouldn't. So that's a workplace portal. And then another one we call a team portal. And this is really your kind of like with Teams, it's your ad hoc cross-functional group. It's really just to share things, share documents, share discussions, maybe a calendar and that type of thing, where collaboration is a primary function. Okay, it's not so much about organizing everything perfectly, it's about collaborating on different things, highly used in projects. Now, when we take a look at now, what does this mean from the SharePoint or the Teams perspective? Communication site is usually built in SharePoint. It is a SharePoint capability. And workplace portal is usually a SharePoint group site, and you can connect it to a team so that you can actually have IT share as a team and have channels for the network team and the desktop team and so on. But behind it is SharePoint, and it will usually have lists and libraries because it's much more around organizing things. Okay, but you can hook a team to it. The team portal a lot of times is just using Teams, and that is just fine for sharing documents and doing some very basic things. Now, it's important you understand these things, that there's places you don't want to just create. You don't want to create a communication site from Teams because it doesn't work. Even a workplace portal, if you create it using just a team, you're going to have a document sharing place, but that's about it, and it's only going to be available to that functional group. There's no sharing with anybody that they provide services for or that type of thing. So that's why it's important to have a SharePoint portal that's connected to a team. Okay, so in designing your portal structure, you're going to take these different portals, align them with the different types of groups, and you'll produce what we call a digital workplace structure. Okay, and you may have some teams out here that would be, for instance, like your board portal, board of directors or committees or leadership portal as well, that aren't part of this structure. And this is usually hooked up, by the way, in a hub and spoke type of thing within SharePoint. Okay, so the key thing to understand here, and you've heard me reference it, is kind of the difference between Teams and Office 365 groups in SharePoint. So at the core of any team or any department or group, these are actually all Office 365 groups, and they're defined groups of people that are part of that team, and they all share, because they're in this group, things like files and documents and notes and email and calendar meetings, tasks, chats and discussions, and there's other things like Power BI and so on, are all built around the concept of a group. Now, you can actually access a group through SharePoint, through Teams, and there also is a shared mailbox generally here. So when I say that a department needs to have a SharePoint site or a group site with SharePoint, it means that the user interface may be a SharePoint site and or a team. It could be one and the same here too. So this is what's at the core of these things. So when you create a team or you create a SharePoint team site or group site, that's what is actually behind it. So let's take a look at now building the organization, building the digital workplace out. And I'm not going to go into exactly how you create a site and all that type of stuff. That we have other webinars that talk about that. But the first thing you might want to do is to decide, create this home site, home page. And this is in SharePoint. This is a communication site, and you want to create that. And this is where you're going to have news, information, portals, communication sites. And we also add in something called Employee Central, which I'll talk about in a minute. Now, this type of site you may also want to do for what I would call your sub-home sites, maybe a region, North America, Europe and Middle East, Asia as well, and have informational type pages or home pages for the people that are in those regions as well too. So that's kind of the first step, is create your information site. The second here is we have a special site in ours built out, and we like it because it's in the eyes of the employees. And so one click away from the home site, if I need to find a document or I need to get service, such as do a service request or find time off or expenses, this ESS is a centralized thing that says, I don't care what department it's in the eyes of the employee just wants to find the document. And so it centralizes some of the things, and it actually reaches out and touches some of these other departments in a governed way to allow an employee to find things from here rather than to have to know what department, let's say the Excel quick reference card is in, which would be in IT, but do they know that? So it's from the eyes of the employee that this is designed. Okay, the next, and again, this is something that's part of typically the intranet and is in SharePoint. Okay, the next area here now is start to add your department sites. Okay, and these are again the workplace portal type sites. So these actually have our service departments. They actually organize documents. They organize tasks and calendars, and even have business processes built into them or links to business processes, because what they're doing is managing a function. That's different than just sharing things in a group. So if you're creating teams, using teams just for this, that's great to share things in a group, but it's not really allowing them to totally manage the function. So you might want to think about creating a SharePoint group site, adding some lists, adding libraries to manage things, like perhaps finance wants to manage vendors and they need a vendors list out there. So I recommend using SharePoint group sites. You can still connect a team to it, but a group site will allow you to do much more around that, organizing things, the depth of the portal of what it can do as well. Okay, the next area here too is you might have some permanent groups. So they're like groups. In other words, they're not providing services. They just want to share some documents and information. So we call those permanent groups, and you could do those in teams as well. Then finally, on the next one, you have ad hoc or cross-structure teams or groups. These are typically peer-to-peer teams. A lot of times they're projects, committees, boards, and you can use teams really just to do sharing. You can use a SharePoint group site if you wish to. It does kind of the same function. But again, this is just purely collaboration. This is organizational here, and this is collaboration, but probably a little bit more than just a pure, I want to share some docs out here too. So in essence, you're creating a portal map of what types of portals you need to deploy in your organization. Rather than just letting people go create all themselves, go design the house and build the house out here ahead of time. Okay, and again, these can be group sites. There is SharePoint behind these out there, but they're typically more team, created with teams as well.